Okay. Hi guys, my name is Renee. I am a recovering alcoholic and recovering drug addict. I currently have 668 days. On Sunday will be 2 years. I'm going to share the things that I've experienced in my life that brought me to getting sober again this time, and how this time has worked for me, and basically my story. My addiction started really young as a kid. I grew up in the Bay Area. By the time I was 14, I was already facing 2 grand theft auto charges and my first DUI. By the time I was 17, I was pregnant and homeless and living in a car. I had great parents, I had a great life, I had great opportunities. However, I chose at that time in my life to make really bad decisions and suffer consequences for them, I guess. However, in 1995, I asked God, if there was a so-called God, if he could get me off drugs. So I got on my knees and I prayed and I asked for a baby, and my prayers were answered and I got pregnant with my son Ben. He was born in December of 1995, and he was known as my sobriety baby. I have 24 years clean from meth, which back then they called crank. During the period of my life, I turned into an extremely high-functioning alcoholic, and got married, got the house, got, the jet skis, the Harley, everything. I've experienced a lot of trauma and adversity prior to that stage of my life. I belonged to a lot of shitty clubs. I've been raped, a victim of domestic violence. I've just been in some really crappy situations. In 2015, I decided to divorce my husband at that time, move away, and start a new chapter in my life. And my father, Hollis, got sick, and he actually really quickly ended up passing away in December of 2015. Now, at that time, my kids were grown, doing very well and on their own. So I proceeded to move to Southern California and start a new chapter. March 25th of 2016 is a day that I still find very hard to describe into words. I was at work, and during lunch, I had a real strange feeling come over me. When I got back to the office, I told my QB mate that something was wrong with my kid. Something was wrong with Benny. I just knew something was wrong. I had talked to my mom at lunch and asked, have you seen Benny? Because I talked to him on a daily. And she said, no, I haven't seen him. So I started to look in the jails. San Joaquin County, Santa Celeste County, Alameda County. I got to San Francisco and I was like, holy crap, there's a lot of jails in San Francisco. So I had, because I've experienced this twice in my life now, I had what some people call a spiritual awakening, a sixth sense, voodoo, I don't know, call it whatever you want to call it. I still have a very, very difficult time describing what happened to me that day, and the feeling that I felt within my soul. And I went in the bathroom because the job that I had, we weren't allowed to have our cell phones on. I text my son Alex, and I text my son's best friend Gibby, and the message said, where's Benny? Something's wrong with Benny. Where's your brother? And turned my phone off and proceeded to have some sort of like semi-blackout where I told my grandma she could go. Benny was there. It was really hard for me to describe still to this day. You'll read about it in my book sometime. It's hard for me to put it into words. Then I go to break at 3:15, and my phone is just going crazy and crazy. And my son's best friend, his cousin, Gibby, mother was on the line, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs. I could feel the emotion. A lot of the days following that are a complete blackout. I don't recall the agreements that I made or things that I did, the behaviors that I was basically blacked out the entire time. I proceeded to think that I could overcome this and continue to be a functioning alcoholic, as everything else that I've experienced in my life. But losing Benny took me to a complete place where I questioned everything. My existence, my purpose on life, because my purpose was always to be a mom. I mean, the whole being 17 and homeless in a car stems, I was so determined to have my son Alex. Benny was pronounced dead 6 minutes later after I sent that text message. I was the one technically that found him. I was 225 miles away at my office, and I felt it. It was the most undescribable feeling that I would never wish upon any human in this world to ever have to experience. I was that cool mom that let him smoke weed. I was that cool mom that if they were hungover would cover for those kids. But I was a good mom. I didn't get my kids taken away. I tried to do my best by them. If anything, I was a workaholic. But what I started to experience after the loss of Benny is what took me to recovery and sobriety. February of 2018, I was so hammered, blackout drunk, I woke up with a belt around my neck. I wanted to die. I was so determined to find a way out of this world, but not hurt the people that I love. And I reached out to my girlfriend in Manjica, my writer, that had years clean, and her husband had passed her, and I asked for help. That was the first step. I backed out of going to treatment a couple times, always found excuses why. You know, the disease will do that to you. It still plays tricks on me today, and I fathom will for the rest of my life. However, I have that missing piece now. And that missing piece is a spiritual connection with something, that higher power. Hollis, my dad, used to say it was the doorknob. And if he touched the doorknob from the moment he came in, he didn't want to drink till the moment he went out to go back to work and not drink during the weekend. So whatever it is, whatever that higher power, for me, it's God. All right, so after several attempts to avoid rehab, now I've opened my mouth and I've reached out to my therapist. They said I would be on a waiting list for 90 days, and I basically said I won't be alive in 90 days. So I figured I'd go to rehab for 30 days, just go back to Bakersfield and continue to drink and just appease everyone, because now that I said I'm losing it. During this period of time, I also got diagnosed with severe chronic depression. I, as an individual, throughout my life, have known people that had depression, but never really had empathy for it, I guess is the word. However, experiencing depression along with drug addiction and alcoholism led me to a place where I could not even take a shower, get out of bed. I had absolutely, I mean, I was probably 8 pounds thinner than this. But depression is a serious thing too. However, I believe that you can kick its ass as well. So I ended up going to treatment. While I was in treatment, I was doing a lot of reading, and I read a book called Where is God When It Hurts? It talked about people, talked about the Holocaust, it talked about people with leprosy, and it talked about the book of Job, which kind of intrigued me because I've always been spiritually lost, have you? I stayed up breaking the rules in rehab all night long, and I read the entire book of Job. When I got to the end of the book of Job, not understanding how to even read the Bible, but just what it means to me, I got the same feeling that I did the day that my son died. Again, epiphany, I don't know how to describe it, a spiritual awakening. And I went for the first time, Benny's in heaven. God doesn't replace Job's kids. He gives him new kids because they're in heaven and Job's going to see them again. And Job didn't lose his faith in all his suffering. He's the person in the Bible that experiences the most suffering besides Jesus Christ, of course. At that moment, when I came to the realization that Benny was in heaven, I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision if I was going to live the rest of my life on this earth mad at God, miserable, blaming him, blaming others for my behaviors, my decision making, my act up, my use, my drinking. So at that moment, instead of thinking that I was going to walk on this earth for the rest of my life and just be miserable, what if there was this perfect place that God has created? And what if I'm supposed to do his word and his work and I'm going to get to see Benny again? And at that moment, I made the decision to turn my life and will over to God. I said, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be an alcohol and drug abuse counselor. I'm going to work with teenagers because I think that's where it starts, the education. Recovery is difficult, and it's just one component of it. Once you get sober, living life is a whole different component. Being able to recognize your behaviors, being able to make good decisions versus bad ones, and change the outcome of your consequences, whether they're positive or negative. So there's a lot involved with recovery, but I truly believe that you can change the way you act, think, and behave if you're provided all the tools. Counseling, you got to work a program. If you don't like AA, you don't like NA, you got to find a 12-step faith-based. You got to give it back. You got to do something. Anyways, that's what works for me. That was that missing component my whole life. I am able to wake up every morning with a passionate purpose, that God's not punishing me. God is actually using me. And he saved my life twice. He saved my life when he gave me Benny to get me off meth. And then he saved my life again to get me sober, to spread the word to these kids. And I'm going to write a book. Things I've experienced in the last less than 2 years. There's things that happen in life that are obvious, and there's things that happen that are God. The things that I've experienced, getting accepted to UOP, getting my degree, my job, placing my dad and my son at the cemetery, getting a house the next day across from the cemetery with people renting to me with that. I have no source of income just because my son's death made the awareness in their family. I am so grateful today that I'm able to talk to the kids that I talk to, that I'm able to work with amazing staff that I work with, that his way, recovery in Manteca, will change your life. Thank you, Katina, Sean, Miss Sherry, and Pastor. You absolutely led me to God, and he's done the rest. He gets the credit. And if you can have a beer after work and go to bed, I'm so lucky you. But me, it ain't going down that way. My heart is hurt, and what heals it is God, and sharing my story and educating people. But again, recovery is just part of it. It's about the decision making. It's about going back to basics, believing in yourself, goal setting. There's a lot of different components that come into play if you want to be successful. But I truly, truly believe that all those things are possible.